What are we going to be doing? Hello, hello, good evening.
What?
Hello.
Discs.
Hello, 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 hello. Hello. Synchronise your watch now. Hello. Hello, Merry Christmas. Hello. Hello, good evening. Hello. Hello. In the event. Hello. Hello. Why are we here? So.
Experiment number 7.
Hello. And hello. Hello and welcome to
In the court of the Wenton King,
part 30.
we're doing Breathless.
By Camel. It's a good album, obviously. All Camel albums are good. What a great band. It's an honour to have reviewed such a band. But I think, had I heard the albums, I probably would have done Mirage to Rain Dances, I think. Probably, maybe the first album. I don't think it's awful, but it is obviously commercial. A deliberate move to make it more commercial, make it more accessible. There's an attempt to make... It sounds like there's an attempt to make singles, but there weren't any singles. Because the thing about singles and albums is, I mean, with albums in those days, if it was good, there was a chance it was going to be a hit because it was good. But with singles, it was just random whether the record company decided to push it or not. There's no reason why quite a few of these songs couldn't have been single hits, but they didn't release one.
Yeah, I mean, it does raise a slightly thing, though. I mean, there is the widespread belief that Camel and, okay, let's say prog, the music that they create, as compared to, say, something like pop, which is targeted at sales, it's traditionally thought that that's a better type of music.
Yeah, it's a more emotional depth.
So the question arises, what happens when someone who is quite adept at making higher art music tries to make more mainstream music, doesn't get a hit? You know, it kind
makes it kind of pointless.
It upsets the balance a little bit, and I think there was a little bit of anti-Breathless and Rain Dances amongst fans, and I think that's why, because it kind of highlights that issue. That shouldn't be the case. It should be the case that when you've got good prog band, if they go over to pop, they should be able to manage that quite easily.
Having said they're changing, and change is good, the same year Genesis did the same thing. Very similar in approach to the way they were changing their music, but the difference is Genesis are much more song oriented. They're much better at it, and I imagine they were much more astute business wise.
It's the dawn of the 80s as well. There's a lot of sort of very 80s sounding stuff going on in here.
Yeah, I mean, they were all doing it. The other thing is about the vocals. Now, we've complained about the vocals before, but actually the vocals on this are a lot better than the vocals in the past. But the difference is, mostly these are songs, with a couple of exceptions. So consequently, the vocals are the main attraction, whereas in the past, the vocals were just part of the whole thing, and they're actually quite a small part. But when it becomes a song, or even a pop song, it's all about the vocals. So, which means, Richard Sinclair, the new bass player, is now a frontman, and Andy Latimer is now the frontman. The sound of his voice is the sound of the band. Mm-hmm. So, which means that the whole texture of the sound is different, even though musically it's not all that different, really.
Obviously, this is the ultimate album of Peter Barden's. He wasn't very happy with the way things were going, and you can see he probably wanted to stay more traditional.
But, at the same time, some bands, it was just a natural change. I think with Genesis, it was a natural change. Obviously, the lineup change is a thing with Camel as well. They changed the bass player first. And I think Andy Latimer said that was the sort of turning point. Once someone had left, it became unstable. But I kind of disagree. I mean, I think musicians should play with different people. And this idea that, when you form a band, you stay together for life. You cut your wrists and become blood brothers. Ridiculous success forever and then retire. That's not musical. That's not what a musician is. That's not, and there are exceptions to that. Like the Beatles or Led Zeppelin or something. But they're the exception. Obviously, from a personal point of view, it gets a bit more stressful. But they're not singing, and so that's always limits it. If you're going to make pop songs, suddenly there's a huge limiting factor, and it makes it kind of polite. It's a very polite way of singing, but it does compromise the music when you're depending on the weakest element in the band.
Yeah.
Track 1,
Breathless.
Might be my least favourite on there. Actually, listening to all these albums, I had them on an MP3 disc in the car, so occasionally, but it was always seemed to be, because it begins with B, it was always came on first, and the first few seconds of it sounded horrible. It's all very twee, isn't it? So dee 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 la la la, and we get another little hint of a Morrissey-ness.
Yeah,
on the vocals,
which is really strange. Doug Ferguson's left the band.
The spirit of Morrissey continues. I'm sure Morrissey's very good, but obviously we don't get that stuff.
I actually think this is. You're right. The opening could be on an advert for Malt Loaf Light,
which is why it could have very easily been a hit single.
The problem I have with this I don't understand the sensibility of that type of music. It's sort of very nice, very pleasant, very bland. It's almost like a noble gas. It completely doesn't react. The neurons in my brain do not react to it at all. I got a distinct feeling of Bell and Sebastian when I was listening to it. I'm not a big fan of Bell and Sebastian, but I do listen to it occasionally. There is a sort of a point when I just need
whimsical.
Yeah, some noise that's not offensive on in the background that's not going to distract my attention. Then it sort of goes on.
And track 2,
Echoes.
Echoes. You can't call a song Echoes.
There
are a few though, aren't there? There are a few songs called Echo. But yeah, it's nothing like that Echoes. But this is traditional Camel, and it's very, very good. The ethereal guitar and all that, brilliant.
The intro is I don't know, it's about 4.5 minutes long. Is brilliant. Typical Camel.
Yeah.
And then it seems to have a bit of a rubbish song tacked on the end of it.
Yeah.
Next track.
Wing and a Prayer. Another pop song, more poppy I think, but less whimsical and twee. That's all I can say about it.
Yeah, it's very nice.
And it could have been a pop hit, no reason why not.
4.
Down on the Farm. This is like a cross between the Wurzels and Chaz and Dave. Yeah. I mean, Caravan kind of did that sort of thing, and obviously Richard Sinclair comes from Caravan, so that does kind of make sense. I like this because it's different. They're not just making watered down version of Camel that's just a pop song. They're doing something completely different and trying it, and that's cool. Makes it totally different because they're dependent on his voice, and he's someone who's only just joined the band for an album.
Well, I mean, this could have saved the album because it made me laugh, and
yeah,
a laugh goes a long way in my book. If it had been a little bit more self-referential, then I think it would have added sort of like another layer. The thing, it's almost sort of like a Zappa thing, maybe. Almost that kind of abstract looking at their own music, but it's not. And
no, it's not. No,
it's not. So it doesn't quite save the album.
Next song.
Starlight Ride.
Starlight Ride. And then we're back to another light thing, and it's much lighter and right down and quiet.
Quite a nice intro, ruined by everything else. The problem I have with this is similar to Highways of the Sun on Rain Dances. There's something I don't like about the John Anderson thing,
Yeah.
And I think it's the sort of the way of using language, you know, the language of imaginative things in a really unimaginative way.
Next song.
Summer Lightning.
Now I think this is the most successful song on there because it sounds like Camel. You can dance to it. It sounds like disco. So it is danceable Camel. That's clever.
Yeah.
That really is clever. It's good. It's a good tune. The whole thing is completely overwhelmed by the guitar solo at the end, which I think was going to fade, and I bet he just kept going. And then they played the tape and they thought, bloody hell, let's keep that, because it's the highlight of the album, really. That extended guitar solo. I'm very wary of saying Andy Latimer sounds like other guitarists. It's an easy way out because he has his own sound. But having said that, I mean, the best way to describe this, it's kind of, there's a bit of Gilmour, but there's a bit of sort of Jimmy Page / kind of clunkiness to it.
Yeah.
Which is great.
It starts, the intro lost me to start with, and then there was sort of like there's an odd keyboard solo.
Oh, the keyboard solo is a bit, yeah.
And then there's an odd guitar solo, and then that guitar solo comes in, which I thought, that's
it
quite
just keeps going.
And it sort of, that rescues it.
Yeah.
Up until that point, it sounds a little bit insincere, and then when that kicks in, you say, actually, now I get this. This is good.
Yeah.
And it is quite funky, which is, we always like a bit of funk.
Yeah, it really is disco Camel. Track 7.
You make me smile.
You make me smile. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. I mean, we were scathing when we were reviewing Michael Jackson because of what he was doing was basically music. Can we really avoid applying that to this as well?
I tell you what I noticed. I took isolated spots, and the arrangement's not that bad. It's quite clever yet, but there seems to be this relentless will to make it sound banal and irrelevant.
Yeah.
And that annoyed me.
Yeah.
Because it could.
Such a shame.
Could be a good song.
Yeah.
What can you do?
What can you do? Next song.
The Sleeper.
The Sleeper. Now this one, kind of like Summer Lightning, in that they've taken kind of what Camel were doing, maybe what they were doing on the last album, but they've sort of refined it, cut out the fat, if you like, and simplified it and made it just what it is. So it's kind of still a fusion thing, but it's an easier fusion. But that makes it boring. For me, that makes it boring. But I'm expecting you to like it.
I do like it.
Yeah,
I do like it because it feels like a proper
Alright, which leaves
Rainbow's End.
Rainbow's End. Nice little melody. It's a subdued poppy thing, but very McCartney. And it's weird that it doesn't go anywhere. It's just one little bit of a really good melody, and even I could think of where that could go into a really good song, but it doesn't. It just keeps repeating the same bit, and that's it.
I've listened to it, decided it wasn't worth spending the time to think about it, and that started coming in round about You Make Me Smile. You sort of, there's a lot of this stuff going on, and I started thinking it's got the nice arrangements in there, but is it, you know, with a title like You Make Me Smile, is it worth investing the time to sort of
discover that there's nothing there?
Yeah. And Rainbow's End, I decided, well, no, it's not. it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
So that's Breathless. Camel are brilliant, and I'm uncomfortable saying it's bad because it isn't a bad album. It's just not what we want.
I think what it is, personally, I think I'm being super harsh because there's a lot of stuff here that I like.
So ends Camel. This is a complete coincidence. We're going to see him on Monday. Isn't that awesome? Yeah. So Camel top 10. Number 1 is The Snow Goose in its entirety. Great album from beginning to end. So that starts.
I'm going to go with the opening track on the first album, Slow Yourself Down.
Lady Fantasy.
I have Earthrise.
First Life.
I'm going to go Aristillus.
Airborne.
I'm going to go with Tell Me because it's good all the way through. It really won me over.
Lunacy.
Okay, so I'll have one of these days. I'll get an early night.
That's the end of Camel. Thank you very much for watching. The Wenton King will return with Diamond Dogs by David Bowie. A one-off Bowie.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I'm so cool.